The Not So Perfect Pair by starcollectorsilas. Chapter 22. The Perfect Pair. Birthday special for Dazai Samu. Happy birthday, Dazai. Chuya stood up straighter as he saw Dazai walking towards him, and he smiled widely, cheeks pink. Happy birthday! Chuya said before Dazai could say anything, and Dazai grinned, bowing exaggeratedly before he reached Chuya. Thank you. I'll be taking autographs at the end of the day. Dazai said cockily, and Chuya rolled his eyes, elbowing him once he got near enough. Nobody would ever want your autograph, loser. Maybe only if you become a famous artist. Dazai pouted and whined, feigning hurt. You're so mean, Chuya. Whatever. Chuya responded with a grin, taking Dazai's hand and pulling him along to begin their walk to school. The day was warm and bright, the sun shining on the damp ground after the rain through the night, and Chuya felt weirdly relaxed in the slightly humid air, his hand in Dazai's, still riding the giddy high from the night before that had meant he struggled to sleep. Dazai seemed as best as he could be, like he had slept well, hair done in the same way it had been yesterday, just without the clip tucking it behind his ear. He was smiling, looking up at the sky and birds as they passed, before he suddenly turned his attention on Chuya, hesitating before speaking. I don't have any marks from my soulmate, he said thoughtfully, tentatively, like he knew something Chuya didn't. That made Chuya's thoughts recalibrate to be slightly more defensive, watching Dazai closely. I think that's really funny that I don't have anything from my soulmate given how clumsy I can be. I injure myself really easily. My soulmate probably somehow manages the opposite. Dazai said carefully, and Chuya frowned. He was sure he heard something similar before. There must have been a hint dropped in Dazai's words, given the way he was looking at him, but Chuya couldn't find it, and he groaned internally, but otherwise just shrugged. I'm sure you'll get something eventually. Besides, you have all the time in the world to find your soulmate. That doesn't stop you from doing other things, Chuya said, also picking his words cautiously. If he went about this carefully, there was a chance he might get to be with Dazai. At least for a while, until he found his soulmate. That was his plan, wasn't it? Wait until Dazai's birthday to find out who Dazai's soulmate is. Then, if they didn't know or Dazai doesn't like them, he can ask Dazai out. If Dazai likes him. And well, Dazai kissed him. His forehead, sure, but still kissed him. So Dazai might be willing to do it again. Only on the lips. And hopefully again after that. And again, until they got sick of it or died or whichever came first. If he could just get one taste of Dazai, one press of their lips, long or short, soft or hurried, he wouldn't want anything else again. His face flushed as he let himself properly daydream about it, a cinematic moment where they got to confess, the sun setting between them while they sit at the bridge over the river, able to have that perfect moment in all coming-of-age movies where the main character finally kisses the love interest, the way they just know what to do. He hasn't ever properly thought of himself in that moment, but he could imagine it now. How perfect it would be. Lost in his daydreaming, he didn't realize as they got to the school gates, passing through them. He brought himself back to the present blinking away his thoughts as they were stopped almost instantly as they walked into the building. It was by a student in the next tier up and her group of friends, and she addressed Dazai, not even bothering to hide her curiosity as she spoke. "Have you gotten your soulmate mark?" she asked, glancing between him and Chuya. "Happy birthday, by the way," she added as an afterthought. Dazai looked a little confused, but he shook his head, answering hesitantly. "No, and thanks, I guess," he responded. The girl looked thoughtful, if a little crestfallen, looking between Dazai and Chuya as though considering them. "Oh, I see," she said, tilting her head, her loose red hair falling from where she had placed it over her shoulders. "Was there a reason for the question?" Chuya asked snippily, glaring at her, and she glared back at him. "No, I'm just curious about whether your boyfriend has his soulmate or not yet," she said haughtily. Chuya spluttered, and then she looked almost smug at his reaction, once again glancing between the two of them like she was looking for something. When she couldn't find it, she turned away, her friends leaving with her, and Chuya dropped Dazai's hand, realizing how tightly he had been holding it. "That was odd," he muttered, clearing his throat. "Yeah," Dazai said, chewing on his lip, looking conflicted. "I wonder why she was asking," Chuya added, looking at the girl and her friends' retreating backs. Dazai just frowned. That wasn't the last time the question was asked. All day, between their classes, they had people coming up to them, asking Dazai about his soulmate mark with a kind of interest Chuya couldn't explain. All of them seemed to be only more interested when they noticed Chuya glaring at them from wherever he was near Dazai. It was all Chuya could think about, glaring at the boiling pot of water while he was in home economics. Dazai was making the sauce. Well, quote-unquote making was probably not the best term to be used. Dazai was staring at the tomatoes he was supposed to be chopping with a wrinkled nose when he no doubt contemplated just leaving the classroom. Chuya watched Dazai begrudgingly start chopping the tomatoes, and he sighed, looking out the window at the dull sky. It had changed abruptly, going from bright and sunny to dark and gray, and he could see the first few spots of rain beginning already, pattering on the glass panes. Their teacher was a substitute today, and the class was loud and rowdy, and he could see Tachihara and Higuchi bickering near the back of the classroom, and Kanikida was paired with Yosano behind him and Dazai. He was so thankful it was just a simple pasta dish today. He didn't have the patience for anything else. He just wanted to go home and give Dazai his birthday present. His mind wandered to the envelope sitting on his desk, one he was still torn on whether he was going to actually give Dazai or not. The contents were delicate. He had agonized over it, perfecting every word, every sentence and hidden meaning or reference, until the poem turned into prose, a letter length of careful wishing and desperate yearning. The thought of giving his heart on a platter like that, served with a flourish of the fancy fountain pen, made a nervous kind of excitement rise in his gut and make him feel like he might throw up. The water was boiling now, and Chuya sighed heavily, glancing at Dazai as he went to wash his hands of the tomato, looking vaguely nauseous. Chuya hummed absently as he looked for the scissors, and he scowled as he opened the drawer and couldn't find them, and he glanced over at the dishes left by the last class who hadn't cleaned up properly, spotting the scissors with them. He rolled his eyes and just grabbed the knife Dazai had been using to cut the vegetables at the same time as he reached for the pasta bag. Dazai raised an eyebrow and returned to his pot, drying his hands with a paper towel. "Careful, Slug, you're gonna hurt yourself," Dazai said airily, but with an undertone of anxiety. Chuya huffed, stabbing the knife into the bag as he usually would. "I've done this plenty of times, it's fine," he said dismissively and adjusted his grip on the knife and made the sharp movement to cut through the bag. At the exact time he moved, there was a crash from the back of the room, and his head snapped up to see Higuchi and Tachihara covering their ears as their pot crashed to the floor. With the sudden movement, his grip slipped, and the knife cut into the palm of his left hand. "Fuck!" he yelled, dropping the knife and the bag, pasta spilling onto the table as he did so, grabbing his wrist and hissing as blood quickly started pouring from the wound on his palm. "Chuya!" Dazai yelled back, and there was a sudden silence across the room as Dazai jumped forward, grabbing another paper towel and pressing it onto Chuya's hand, attempting to stop the bleeding. Chuya winced, and Dazai quickly replaced the paper towel as the first one soaked through, and conveniently the substitute teacher had disappeared, leaving a room of shocked, and in some cases, curious teenagers to just witness the spectacle. "Ow, ow, ow!" Chuya hissed as Dazai pressed harder. "I needed to stop bleeding as much," Dazai responded back, his voice panicked. "Just hold still," Dazai demanded, and he peeled back the bloody paper towel with shaky hands, inspecting the cut. Chuya watched, his breathing shaky as he tried to stay still, until Dazai moved, and a flash of red on the inside of Dazai's left hand caught Chuya's attention. "Dazai?" Chuya started, staring at Dazai's hand as he moved again. "It's not that deep. I don't think you'll have damaged anything," Dazai said in response, ignoring Chuya's tone. "No, Dazai!" Chuya tried again, and Dazai just continued speaking, voice slightly shaky but audibly relieved. "It'll be fine. We just need to clean and dress it, and I can do that." "Dazai!" Chuya snapped for the third time, and this time, with his uninjured hand, he grabbed Dazai's left, turning his palm up to the sky. He felt violently sick, staring at the matching red line across Dazai's palm, his fingers stained with Chuya's blood. It was so quiet he could hear a pin drop, like the world had stopped spinning, just for this moment. Dazai was extremely pale, staring at the mark with wide eyes, frozen like he was stuck between fight or flight. Chuya curled his left hand into a fist, breath hitching at the pain as he dug his fingers into the fresh wound. Dazai hissed and winced at the phantom pain in his own hand, and Chuya felt his chest swell with so many different indiscernible feelings. Of course, the only person whose favorite color is blue he never considered was Dazai. And with that thought, his eyes flicked to the blue lines on his arms, and his brain froze. A realization seemed to hit him, at the same time as it hit most of the others watching this go down. The pretty aquamarine lines covering Chuya's arms weren't always that color, and they didn't originate on Chuya's body. Suddenly, Dazai's surety in what was causing the marks, his absence every time they were added to, the reactions of pain every time he was touched, it all made sense. And he was drawn to 4 nights ago. The deep blue marks across the side of his neck he was still hiding with the choker. His eyes flicked to the bandages around Dazai's neck. His chest constricted as all the pieces began to fit together in his head. Every hesitant movement, every unexplained absence, everything being explained as he came to the most important realization of his life. Dazai was his soulmate. Dazai was the one carrying all the original wounds. And then Dazai tore himself from Chuya's grasp, his eyes wide and his expression one of pure fear and panic, his breathing quick and heavy, eyes glittering with tears. He quickly pulled his apron off, dumping it onto the floor, and nobody moved to stop him as Dazai ran from the classroom, leaving everything behind, Chuya barely glimpsing the sight of Dazai wiping his eyes as he turned away. Chuya stared after him, his mouth slightly open as he took a deep breath. Chuya, known for his irrationality, impulsivity, and emotional reactions, seemed perfectly calm as he took his own apron off, turned the cooker off, and then he took off running after Dazai. By the time he got into the main hall, he had no clue where Dazai had went. His only option was to guess, and he raced towards the stairs, racing up them to the first place he could think of to go. He ran to the bathroom, bursting through the door to find it completely empty. He froze, chest heaving as he looked around, dread filling him as he walked right to the end of the cubicle, pushing the door open and faltering as there was no Dazai. He wasn't there. He couldn't find him. Where the hell else could he be? He turned around as he heard one of the doors bang close, and there Dazai was. He had run to hide here. He just realized this would be the first place Chuya checked. "Dazai, wait! We need to talk!" Chuya yelled, but Dazai just ran again, leaving the bathroom. This time, Chuya didn't wait before running after Dazai, following him down the stairs and through the halls until Dazai ran through one of the side doors outside into the rain, the fight with the lock slowing him down enough for Chuya to catch up. Chuya reached out and grabbed Dazai's arm, pulling him back. "Wait! Fucking talk to me, jackass!" Chuya shouted, upset and hurt. "Don't touch me!" Dazai retaliated, pulling his arm away from Chuya, stepping back and breathing in and out sharply, like he was struggling to breathe. "Then stop running!" Chuya snapped. "I'm trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, and you running is just making you look guilty, like you caused this fucking mess." "Take a look, Chuya. It's pretty obvious I did cause this mess." Dazai practically screamed. "Yeah, 'cause you fucking lied to me again!" Chuya shouted, shoving all his hurt and concern aside, letting himself get angry instead. "You didn't think to tell me when you were my soulmate. You didn't think to tell me when Oda died. You didn't think to tell me you tried to fucking kill yourself." He threw his hands in the air, exasperated and hurt. "Do you not trust me? Do you hate me? Is that it? Do you just not want me to know? Think I can't handle it? You have watched me agonize over all this for weeks, and you knew the whole time?" He asked, confused, stepping towards Dazai again. Dazai was just frozen, breathing quickly and heavily, staring at Chuya with wide eyes as Chuya kept going. "You could have died, and I wouldn't have known. You almost died. Dazai, you almost died." Chuya screamed, tears in his eyes, threatening to fall, the rain drowning out his screams. "You almost died, twice, by your own hand, and you came into school the next day like it was nothing. There was no way you didn't know. You just lied to me about it." Dazai just gaped at Chuya, struggling for words, and he shook his head, his own tears falling, mixing with the raindrops on his face. "No, I couldn't. You don't get it. You don't get it. I couldn't just tell you like that. Hey, Chuya, you're my soulmate because I recognize the cuts covering your arms as my own. Was that what I was supposed to say?" Chuya was struggling to think, unsure how to process everything going on, and he just shrugged, looking around hopelessly. I don't know. This is so stupid. You didn't have to hide this from me. I could have helped. There are so many people worried as all hell about you. And now this? God, I'm just so fucking worried." He stopped, taking a deep breath, and when he breathed out again, it turned into a sob, and he spoke quietly. "Why didn't you tell me?" Dazai stared at Julia, tears falling down his face, and he shrugged, his voice trembling as he spoke. "'Cause I love you. I couldn't risk ruining it." Julia broke down, the tears falling freely as he just stepped towards Dazai and pulled him into a hug and just held on to him tightly. Despite everything, this was still his shitty best friend. His shitty best friend who clearly needed help. Of course he was hurt, but Dazai was too. "You're so fucking stupid for a genius," Julia muttered, and Dazai relaxed a little, his chest shuddering with the force of his tears. "You were a bit of an ass about the entire we would never be soulmates thing," Dazai said, hugging Julia back tightly, his voice shaky in Julia's ear. "I didn't have much of a reason to believe anything good would come out of telling you. I'm sorry." Julia apologized after a moment, feeling guilt flash through him as he thought back to all the times he dismissed anything Dazai said about the potential of them being soulmates. "I didn't mean it. Most of the time. I very quickly realized I wouldn't have minded as much as I said I did, and, well..." He trailed off and buried his face into Dazai's shoulder, mumbling his words. "I realized I really do love you too, like a lot," he whispered. Dazai's breath hitched, and Dazai started crying properly, shaking and coughing as they held on tightly to each other, the rain beginning to let up as they just stood together crying. "Sorry I lied to you. I wish I could have told you. I just couldn't. I didn't want you to find out like this." "How did you want me to find out then? 'Cause one way or another I would have realized what you had done," Julia said, and he pulled away, looking at Dazai carefully. "You couldn't have hid it forever. I would have found out somehow, but I would have helped. Tried to, at least. You should know that." Dazai cleared his throat and looked away. "Maybe I don't want to be helped," he whispered quietly. Julia felt his throat constrict, and there was nothing he could think of to say, hopelessness welling in his chest. "Don't say that. You deserve it, regardless of whether you want it. You do not deserve to suffer, in any way." Dazai looked like he wanted to argue for a second, forming 100 rebuttals in his head, 1,000 reasons he didn't believe it, why in his mind it was the least he deserved, that he was fine the way he was. But there was a kind of determination in the way Julia was looking at Dazai that made him pause, and Dazai took Julia's right hand in his own and just pulled him back into the school. They were a little damp from the rain, and Dazai just quietly pulled Julia to the office, and they managed to slip into the empty nurse's office unnoticed. Dazai had probably done this before, judging by how quickly he located the box of first aid supplies, and Julia sat on the metal bed, looking down at the floor as Dazai came over and took his hand, cleaning the drying blood away with an alcohol wipe. Julia winced at the stinging pain, but didn't say anything, still reeling a little from the conversation they had just had, along with the revelation that Dazai was his soulmate. All his concerns about how either of their soulmates would react to them liking each other seemed kind of stupid now. The time he had been literal inches away from getting to kiss Dazai and said his soulmate probably would have an issue with them kissing, the irony. If not for anything else, at least it would be a funny story to tell. There was so much he needed to unpack. "Dazai?" he asked, glancing at Dazai's eyes, which were carefully trained on the cut on Julia's palm. Yeah? Dazai responded, searching the first aid box for some bandages, and the bell went off, signaling the beginning of lunch. Can I ask why? Julia asked cautiously, and Dazai glanced at him, meeting his gaze for a second before looking away again. Why what? You know what I mean, Julia said, looking at the blue lines over his arms. Why were you hurting yourself so badly? Is there a reason? Dazai took a sharp breath and shook his head. I'm not talking about it, he said firmly, tone almost sharp, until he paused and thought through it. I'm not ready, he amended, finding the bandages he was looking for and beginning to wrap Julia's hand. I'm not going to stop just because you know either, he added, his tone defensive, like he was expecting Julia to fight him on it. But Julia just nodded, watching the bandages being wrapped around his hand, and he swallowed thickly. I understand. I don't expect you to. I imagine it isn't an easy thing to stop just like that. Dazai faltered for a second, surprised at the acceptance. No anger, no excessive remorse, just understanding. He cleared his throat and shook his head. Yeah, it isn't, he agreed quietly. With that, Dazai secured the bandage and began to clean up, putting the first aid box away again and the bloody wipes in the bin. Julia stood up and took a deep breath. When you're ready, he started, watching as Dazai turned to look at him again. I'll be here. I'll help, or not. I'll just listen, if that's what you need. Dazai looked at him carefully, considering his words, until he cracked a small smile and just brushed past Julia to leave the nurse's office. I'll keep it in mind. Julia sighed in relief and followed Dazai, pushing through the crowds of people in the hallways after lunch getting out, feeling horrendously claustrophobic until they managed to get out, stepping out the school into the grounds, and his eyes landed on their friends at their lunch spot and their bags, sitting leaning against the tree. When they went over, it was quiet, and Julia sat down, Dazai following suit as they sat in awkward silence. Not a movement was made, nobody sure what to say, until Kunikida spoke quietly, a small smile on his face. So, yesterday was nothing then? He asked, and Julia groaned, his face going red, and the tension melted like ice. It was! It might not have been if you hadn't interrupted us, though, Julia responded, and Dazai grinned. It really wasn't anything special, Kunikida. It was simply... Dazai paused, thinking over what words to use. Overdue. How else would we have come to the conclusion that Chuya is definitely the biggest loser in the world? Biggest loser? Chuya asked accusingly, glaring at Dazai. The fuck is that supposed to mean? Dazai shrugged and spoke dramatically. Chuya couldn't even ask me a single question. He's a loser because he just stood there staring until we got interrupted. If he had just asked the first time, you were the one standing and staring and doing nothing. At least I actually said something. You just stood there gaping like a fish out of water, which I suppose you were, so I guess I can't be too surprised, can I? Chuya interrupted heatedly. What's going on? Atsushi asked in confusion, and Rampo answered from where he was watching Yosano open her wallet with glee in his eyes. Dazai and Chuya are soulmates and almost kissed yesterday, Rampo said as he was handed a handful of money by Yosano. Atsushi looked shocked, and Akutagawa seemed unsurprised, while Kunikida narrowed in on the exchange of money. Were you two betting on whether they would be soulmates? Kunikida asked in disbelief, and Yosano sighed dejectedly. Yeah, Rampo bet they were soulmates, and I bet they weren't but would date anyway. Hold on, Rampo knew already. He figured it out. I don't think this was a fair bet. Dazai chimed in before Rampo laughed proudly, shaking his head. Nope. We betted the week before Chuya's birthday when you started teasing him about it. It was a perfectly fair bet, Rampo said, and Yosano's glare revealed the truth in the statement. Kunikida seemed unimpressed, but he just addressed Dazai and Chuya again. You guys had quite the scene there. I won't be surprised if half the school knows about this already, he said, smiling a little. Yosano burst forward and spoke excitedly. No, but even the weather was on your guys' side. It was raining and now it's sunny again. I'm jealous. It's like fate is trying to make you guys have the most successful and dramatic love story of all time. Well, fate could have done with intervening for more than the weather being appropriate and adding to the atmosphere, Chuya said with irritation, and he sighed. Dazai nodded in agreement, and he elbowed Chuya. I want to go home early, he whined, leaning against Chuya. I think my parents might object to me skipping more school after my 3-day holiday last week, Chuya muttered, but he was already grabbing his bag and getting up. I think you both are well excused in going home right now, Kunikida said, and Dazai's eyes opened comically wide. Kunikida? Excusing skipping school? Dazai asked in disbelief as he got up. Kunikida frowned and crossed his arms. Don't get used to it. You both have just been through emotional turmoil, and I believe your continued presence here will not have any positive impact on either of you. With a sigh, Kunikida shifted and dug in his bag for something, and then he pulled out a 1,000-yen note and handed it to Dazai. Go away and get slushies on the way home or something, Kunikida said, crossing his arms and looking away. Dazai looked like he was going to refuse the money for a second, before he sighed, smiled, and just kneeled to hug Kunikida. Kunikida was taken aback, and Dazai pulled away quickly. You guys are weird and I'm glad you're my friends, Dazai said, and Chuya laughed, and his hand was grabbed, and quickly he was being pulled to the back gates. They were open, but as they neared, they heard a shout from behind, and Chuya looked around to see one of the PE teachers enlisted in supervising lunch following them, and he sped up. Hey! The teacher yelled, and Chuya took Dazai's hand and started running. Run, Dazai! He yelled, and Dazai instantly started grinning, and they both ran out of the gates, Chuya looking behind to see them being chased, the teacher speaking into his walkie-talkie, no doubt informing the office they'd left. This bit would be fun. Sipping on ice-cold slushies and kicking the puddles as they walk by, Chuya and Dazai walked hand in hand back home. The run from the school staff hadn't lasted long, and they had made sure to stop by the store on the way home to buy slushies, wandering into the library to browse the shelves for a few minutes when they passed. The school would still not be out for another hour at least, which Chuya was well aware of as he let go of Dazai's hand to open the door of his house, stepping inside and slipping his shoes off. Dazai followed suit, and Chuya tried to close the door as quietly as possible, only making a soft click, but as he tried to sneak past the kitchen doorway to go upstairs, his plans were foiled. Chuya Nakahara, just what do you think you're doing home from school this early? His mother said, and Chuya and Dazai both froze, turning to face her. She was standing at the table holding some fabric and a spool of thread, while Chuya's dad didn't look up from where he was carefully sewing a piece of clothing. We got let out early? He suggested, and Dazai nodded solemnly to confirm his story. That's really funny because we got a call from the school saying that you two ran out the school gates at lunchtime after causing a scene in your home economics class," she said, looking at them both with a firm expression. Then she sighed and shook her head. "You two are trouble. Why did you leave school so early?" she asked again. Chuya subconsciously moved his hand behind his back, but then Dazai stepped into the kitchen, holding out his left palm to show the bright red mark across his palm, too bright to be a real injury. Chuya got the hint and stepped forward as well, showing the bandage around his left hand. Chuya's mother quickly put everything together, and she sighed softly, putting down the things she was holding and then pulling Dazai in for a hug. Dazai stiffened up, glancing at Chuya in minor panic until Chuya's mother spoke. "Oh, honey, are you okay?" she asked, and Dazai seemed to freeze, and he swallowed before nodding. "Yeah, I'm fine," he whispered, and Chuya's dad looked up. "What's going on?" he asked, and Dazai pulled himself out of Chuya's mom's arms, clearing his throat. "Chuya and I are soulmates," he explained shortly, and Chuya's dad nodded slowly. "Oh, I see." Chuya's mom cleared her throat. "Okay, Chuya, is your hand okay?" she asked, and Chuya nodded, confirming it was fine. It didn't really hurt anymore. "Dazai, I think there's some things we need to have a proper conversation about, but that can happen on a day that isn't your birthday. For now, you two can just go upstairs. Go have some fun," she said next, and they both just agreed hurriedly, quite happy to run up the stairs and lock themselves in Chuya's room. Dazai got in and made himself comfortable on Chuya's bed quickly, and Chuya moved to his desk and hesitated, grabbing Dazai's presents and the letter sitting on top of them. He turned to join Dazai on his bed, and he handed Dazai the wrapped present, taking a deep breath. "Happy birthday," he said, and Dazai took the present cautiously, looking at him carefully, and then he smiled, ripping open the paper. Dazai's eyes widened as he looked down at the paints and sketchbook he had been given, catching his lip and biting it as he processed them. "I've wanted these ones for ages," he said stupidly, stating what Chuya already knew. "Yeah, why do you think I got you them?" Chuya said, nudging Dazai with his shoulder. "Thank you," Dazai said with a smile, and Chuya looked down at the envelope in his hands. He felt a little nauseous as he did it, but he dropped the letter in Dazai's lap and moved away, going back to his chair and watching from a slight distance. Dazai raised an eyebrow, but he just opened the envelope, looking surprised when 2 bracelets fell out. Carefully hand-braided blue, red, and yellow strands weaving in and out in a pattern, matching with sun and moon charms. Dazai picked them up carefully, staring at them with wide eyes, cheeks pink as he admired them. "You made these?" he asked, and Chuya nodded, his face bright red. "And they're supposed to be matching, right?" Dazai asked excitedly, and Chuya nodded again. Dazai grinned, and he quickly came over to Chuya, holding them. "Which one's mine?" he asked, and Chuya smiled, taking the one with the moon and slipping it onto Dazai's wrist. "This one," he said, and Dazai put the other one on Chuya's wrist for him, admiring the way they looked together. "They're so pretty," Dazai muttered in awe, and Chuya cleared his throat. "There's a letter too. Go read it," he said, and Dazai glanced at him before going back to the bed, sitting on the floor this time with his back against it. Chuya moved to the floor as well, sitting with him, watching anxiously for his reaction. He watched as Dazai began to read, feeling sick and apprehensive. Sick, angry, and jealous. That's how I feel. Hot and bothered like you're under my skin, teasing and taunting like nothing has happened, like nothing had changed. You have appended my world, changed it and claimed it as your own. And worst, I can't complain. I'm sick and nauseous, and the reason why is you. But it's adrenaline at the same time, like you're a drug I can't get enough of, killing me while I admire the color it changes my vision to see. To call you a muse would be an understatement. To call you pretty would be demeaning. To say I love you could never encompass the extent to which I care for you. I want to be with you forever. Forever isn't enough. I could know you for my life and 5 more, and I'd never have enough. There has been a part of me that has known you since before I could know anything else. If the world doesn't want us, and heaven won't house us, I will keep us here. The sky will remain fire, and the ground will grow molten, and we will be here, safe and warm and alive. This room a haven, safe from the horrors. We could float between constellations and carve our names into the stars. We could mold fate to our own design. I could force us together. Damn all that tries to block our way. If nothing will have us, I will still have you. We can be together as one, over and over, again and again, universe after universe. You and I, Dazai and Chuya, the moon and the stars, the planets and the asteroids. Religion is what I find in you, something worth being devoted to. I find you in the perfect things, the sun, the rain, music and art and nature. Everything worth living for I can trace back to you. A memory, a daydream, a wish, another sickening urge to keep you here, to preach my love and teach you how to pick out what I see. In my favorite dreams you are there, in our kitchen with the sun coming through the windows, in our garden teaching our kids to pick out plants. Every time we are together, we are one. If I have to settle as a friend, if I have to watch from afar, I will. But I love you. Since we were kids hiding behind trees, to the day I stop breathing, I love you forever. Chuya. By the time Dazai finished reading, Chuya was refusing to look at him. Chuya. Dazai started, then his voice broke, and he took a shaky breath. I spent a lot of time on that, Chuya muttered, and Dazai nodded. I guess that, he said, wiping a tear from his face. Well then, what did you think? Chuya asked, trying to keep his voice level as he still refused to look at Dazai. Dazai was quiet, and then he moved, shifting closer to Chuya, and he whispered next to him, pulling him into a tight hug. I said it already, but I love you too, for forever, in everything. Chuya felt his face go red, and he felt a little overwhelmed, unsure how to react. Thank you? Dazai laughed a little and pulled away slightly. Chuya actually looked at Dazai now, his flushed cheeks and teary eyes, his messy hair and bitten lips. He swallowed, glancing down at Dazai's lips, and Dazai's hands moved to the sides of his face, his thumbs brushing against Chuya's cheeks, cold against his warm skin. You know, there's a few times we've almost done something I really want to. It would be pretty cool if we could do that now, Dazai suggested vaguely. Chuya scoffed, shifting and moving one of his hands to the side of Dazai's neck, able to feel Dazai's racing pulse. You sure you really want to? He asked, sounding teasing, but actually a little nervous, his heart hammering in his chest. I've wanted to for years, Chuya. Dazai breathed out, and he met Chuya's eyes, looking the most sincere that Chuya had ever seen him. I've done it before. I've wanted to do it again since then. I want to do it again forever. We've kissed before? Chuya asked, slightly confused. New Year's, 2 or 3 years ago. Dazai responded, bringing forward the memory Chuya had forgotten of him and Dazai under the tree while the fireworks went off. Chuya swallowed and nodded, looking down at Dazai's lips. Oh, well, I don't think we did it right. There is no harm in trying again, is there? Not at all, Dazai answered. And then Chuya leaned forward, and he was met halfway, and finally, he was kissing Dazai. Their lips pressed together in a hesitant manner, sparks flying and setting fire to the butterflies in his stomach. And then it was over, and he looked at Dazai with wide eyes. Again, he demanded, and Dazai grinned, happily leaning in for another, pausing to whisper against his lips first. I love you. I really do. Chuya just smiled before kissing him again.
Happy birthday to you.
After dinner and cake, an evening celebrated in Chuya's kitchen and then living room, they both crashed in Chuya's bed, absolutely exhausted. Chuya was laying on his back, Dazai resting his head on his chest while Chuya played with his hair. Was today okay? Chuya asked quietly, and Dazai nodded, yawning. I had fun. It was worth it, he muttered, half asleep on top of Chuya. Good, I'm glad. Chuya responded, content to just let Dazai fall asleep and then maybe sleep himself. But then his door was knocked on and opened, and Koyo stepped into the room. Mori's here for you, Dazai. Said he's picking you up, she said, smiling at him a little, and the change in Dazai was instant. He was wide awake in seconds, sat bolt upright with wide eyes and a panicked expression. Shit! He cursed, throwing himself up and grabbing his phone, not bothering with anything else. What? Chuya asked in alarm, and Dazai shook his head. Doesn't matter, just forgot I was supposed to be home like an hour ago, Dazai said before pushing past Koyo and downstairs. Bye! Thanks for having me, I'll be back. That's a threat! He yelled before Chuya heard the front door slam. Chuya was standing in his doorway with Koyo, and then he trudged downstairs, confusion evident on his face. What the hell was that? He asked, and Koyo, who had followed him, shrugged. I don't know. His dad is pretty strict, right? She suggested. Maybe he is just late. Chuya hummed, a bad feeling stirring in his gut. He walked into the living room to ask his parents about it, but before he could say anything, there was a sharp pain across his face, and he swore. "Fuck!" he yelled, reaching up to his face, wincing at the force. His mother looked up to tell him to watch his language, until she saw his face. "What the fuck just happened to Dazai?" she asked. Chuya's eyes widened as he rubbed his cheek, and he pulled out his phone and opened the camera to see a blue tint across his face. His dad just hit him, Chuya realized. He stared at the mark, feeling incredibly sick. Now what? Yes! Finally! We did it, guys. They did the impossible. They finally confessed. Only 2 more chapters to go. Only 1 video. Can you believe it? We've come so far. I'm so proud of my boys. Perfect chapter to post on Dazai's birthday. Perfect. Too bad I'm a day late. Kunikida made up for his rude interruption in the last chapter, which I am so happy about. Y'all were not kind to him in the Spotify poll. And speaking of Spotify, it's come to my attention that I've been officially promoted as P-parent by hundreds of children and Gala as their leader, who crave pancakes, as in Podfic, as child support. What has my channel become? I love this bit though. I'm currently patting y'all on your heads and will try my best to provide all the pancakes you crave. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Don't forget to send kudos to the author through the link in the description. Also, if you'd like to request any fics, YouTube community tabs are now open for you to post, aside from Tumblr. And if you'd like to show more support or check out the monthly schedule, click the link through Ko-fi. Hope you have a great week. Till next time.